Welcome everybody. This is part 3 in the last part of chapter 6. And this last part is going to be all about gravity and orbits. So I know it seems like maybe a little bit of repetition, but the point of this last section is to put to use the equations that we developed for based on Newton's law of gravity. So just as a little bit of review, we have that from our equation for Newton's second law, and for the law of gravity is, so the law of gravity is telling us that you have g times mass 1 times mass 2 divided by r squared. Is because we're talking about motion that is circular motion, we can set that equal to ma, which then we can set equal to mv squared over r. So this is due to law of gravity. This part we're able to make that statement because it's Newton's second law. And this part we're able to set it equal to everything else because we are dealing with circular motion. Okay, so that combination is going to allow us to solve problems where we have some central mass, an orbiting smaller mass we'll call mass little m, and we are making this path around our object that kind of looks like this. Alright, and in this case we are, if we start labeling all the different properties, well, we have, this is the force of big mass on little mass, and the r in our equations is the distance from the center of the large mass to the center of the small mass. And this v squared term has to do with the velocity that's tangential to the circular path. Alright, so with this information then, so we understand where those three parts came from, and we can use that information to write down the velocity in terms of big G. So velocity in terms of big G and m, well, we get that from setting g big M little m over r squared equal to mv squared over r. And so you can see the little masses cancel out. This one cancel out. One of the r's is going to cancel with the other r, so we're going to get something that looks like v squared, and then on the left hand side we have gm over r. So then if you take the square root of both sides, you get v is equal to square root of big G times big M over r. In this case, I meant, that I'm not making a distinction between little r and big R. So in the drawing for this particular case, little r and big R are the same thing. Okay. So that also means we can make connections with the period, because we remember, so relating it to, as I mentioned, the period, relating it to the period capital T, well, we know velocity is distance over time. In this case, we're talking about the circumference 2 pi r over the period, and we have our expression for v that we've just developed right here. So from that expression, you can combine those terms, and so you get t is equal to 2 pi r over v, which is 2 pi r over the square root of gm over r. And with a little bit of algebra, you end up you can solve this in terms of just t, but you can also say, okay, well, if I want to get t squared, then maybe I just square everything, kind of like that. And if you do that, then you get an expression that says that the period squared is equal to 4 pi squared over gm, so big G, big M, times r cubed. And this is, so the nice thing about this expression is that it tells you that period squared is proportional to the radius to the cube, because this part right here in the middle is just a constant. So that's a cool relationship to have that can help you solve some problems. Alright, now so let's work on this next problem using this concept and this relationship that t squared is proportional to the radius cubed. So it says here we have two satellites with circular orbits and the same radius. Which one has a higher speed? So one of the things that you have to realize is, okay, they have the same radius, which means they have the same circumference. They're going exactly the same path. So if you look at your expression for velocity or for speed, they have the same distance. Now the question is, well, are they going to have a different time? Well, if you look at the expression for time, it doesn't depend. Well, what does it depend on? It does depend on the mass of the larger object, meaning like the Earth in this case. But it doesn't depend on the mass of the satellites. So because of that, they're going to have exactly the same rate, period, which means that in the expression for the velocity, they're going to have the same speed. Okay? So just take into account, so we care about the radius and we care about the period. So in this next question, they're asking about, once again, two identical satellites, but now they have different orbits. One of them is closer to the Earth, one of them is further away. So if you look at your expression again for this speed, well, it's important to look at, so they both, so distance over speed are gonna, they show up in, the distance shows up in both the distance, the radius shows up both in the distance as 2 pi r, but it also shows up in the period. So in that case, if you go down and look at the expression for the period, well, the period is going to depend on the cube of the radius. So that means that the object that is further away is going to have a larger radius, so it's going to have a larger period. So that means that the one with the smaller orbit, because it has a shorter period, is going to be traveling a lot faster than the one that's further away. And a very good example of this has to do with the planets around the solar system, where planets like Mercury and Venus, they go around the sun a lot faster than planets like Uranus and Neptune. And it's because they follow these exact laws. Alright, so let's do another quick check. It says here, a satellite orbits Earth. A space shuttle crew is sent to boost the satellite into higher orbit. So which of these quantities has to increase? So we want to go to a higher orbit, means a higher radius. Okay, so if we have a higher radius, right away from looking at these expressions, we know that the period is going to have to increase. What else has to increase? Or is that the only thing that has to increase? So in this case, it's only the period that ends up increasing. Okay. Let's see, do we want to do this one? So in this case, they're discussing geostationary satellites. It says here, so communication satellites appear to hover over one point at the Earth's equator. A satellite that does this, it appears to remain stationary as the Earth rotates, and it's called a geostationary orbit. So if the Earth is making one rotation in 24 hours, this satellite's also taking 24 hours to go around the Earth. And so when you're standing at the equator and you look up, you'll see a satellite and it looks like it's following you. Later in the day, you look up, the satellite appears to be in exactly the same spot, and it's because it's rotating at exactly the same, with the same period as the person on the ground. And so the question in this case is, well, what radius of orbit do you need to have in order for that to occur? Okay? So for this problem, the idea here is that we're going to take our expression for the period and solve for the radius that gives us the 24-hour period. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down our expression in the next page here. So we're going to have t squared is equal to 4 pi squared over gm times r cubed. So that's a constant. And in this problem, we want to find the radius. So we're going to rearrange this equation. So we're going to solve for r. And so when we do that, we're going to have an expression that has t squared times gm over 4 pi squared. That's going to give us r cubed. So then we have to multiply both sides times 1/3. And that's going to give us the expression that we see on the slide here that says that r is equal to g times the mass of the Earth times the period that we're interested in over 4 pi squared to the power 1/3. Okay, so there's things we already know. We know the constant g is 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11 Newton meters squared per kilogram squared. You can look up the mass of the Earth in your book or online, and that's going to be 598 times 10 to the 24 kilograms. And the last part that we need to do is we need to find the value for t. Well, we know t is equal to 24 hours. We need to convert this to seconds. So we're going to take 24 hours multiplied by, we know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. We know there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So when you go through this, the minutes cancel with minutes, hours cancel with hours. So you're going to have 24 times 60 times 60 seconds, which is what gives you the 8.64 times 10 to the 4th seconds. So you're going to plug in those values into the expression for the radius, and this is what's going to give you the radius for a geostationary orbit is going to be equal to 4.22 times 10 to the 7th meters. Okay. So in this case, so this orbit, it consists with a radius that's about 7 times the radius of the Earth. So this one right here is 7 times the radius of the Earth. And if you look at the International Space Station, the radius for the International Space Station is only about 5% larger than that of Earth. So it's 1.05 times the radius of the Earth. So a geostationary satellite flies much, much higher than the space station. So roughly 7 times higher. And so one of the things that's pretty amazing is we're using these ideas of gravity to, we've calculated the gravitational attraction between you and another person, between 2 lead spheres. We calculated it between a satellite and a planet. And it turns out that these are the same rules that govern how galaxies form. So if you look at an image of a spiral galaxy, like the Milky Way galaxy that we all live in, the laws that govern how solar systems go around the center of the Milky Way galaxy are all governed by these same equations, these Newton's laws of motion, and you could predict basically everything. If you follow up with some of the current research in this area, you may have heard that there's other new concepts called dark matter and dark energy that are starting to be invoked because it looks like astronomers are noticing that the motion of all the galaxies doesn't agree with the observed mass that we can see, and so they believe that there are other types of matter in the universe that we don't see, and we're only now beginning to understand those kinds of properties. But for most of the stuff and the things that have been known for the past 200 years, and even in the everything I mentioned about dark matter and dark energy, that's all stuff that has only really picked up an interest in the past 10 years. But up until 10 years ago, what I described covers most of what you see in the sky. So anyway, this is the end of chapter 6, and the next video will be about chapter 7, and in that case we'll move on to other concepts, and we'll still invoke gravity from time to time. So we'll see you next time. Bye.